Flight 19 refers to the mysterious disappearance of five U.S. Navy bombers during a training mission on December 5th, 1945, in the area of the Atlantic Ocean known as the Bermuda Triangle. The flight, officially known as Flight 19, consisted of five TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, each carrying a crew of three. Here's a summary of the events surrounding the disappearance of Flight 19. On the afternoon of December 5th, 1945, five TBM Avengers took off from the U.S. Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for a routine training mission. The flight was designated as Navigation Problem 1, a practice bomb and run over the Hens and Chicken Shoals in the Bahamas, and then returned to base. Soon into the flight, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the flight leader, reported compass malfunctions and claimed that he was not sure of the plane's locations. This was despite the weather being generally clear at the time, and the communication between Flight 19 and ground control became increasingly difficult due to the radio issues. Taylor's confusion about the flight's location led to the belief that the plane were over the Florida Keys rather than the Bahamas. Despite efforts from ground control to guide them back to the correct course, the situation only continued to worsen. As the flight continued, fuel levels became critical. By around 6 p.m., Taylor radioed that the planes were running out of fuel and that the situation became more desperate. The last communication between the Flight 19 came around 7:30 p.m. when Taylor reported that the planes were flying northeast. At this point, the five aircrafts disappeared without a trace. A rescue mission was launched, but tragically, a Martin Marrier flying boat sent to search for Flight 19 also disappeared without a trace. Despite an extensive search effort, no wreckage from Flight 19 or the rescue plane were ever found. The mysterious disappearance fueled speculations and gave rise to theories, many of which attributed incidents to the so-called Bermuda Triangle, a region in the western part of the North Atlantic Ocean where several aircrafts and ships have supposedly disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The U.S. Navy conducted an investigation into the disappearance of Flight 19, but was unable to determine a definitive cause. The official conclusions stated that the cause of the loss of Flight 19 is unknown. The disappearance of Flight 19 remains one of the enduring mysteries associated with the Bermuda Triangle and has been subject to various documentaries, books, and theories attempting to explain the events surrounding that fateful day. The disappearance of Flight 19 involved 14 crew members, approximately 3 in each of the 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers. Here's a brief overview of the crew members who were tragically lost during the mysterious incident on December 5th, 1945. Flight leader Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor. Lieutenant Taylor was a seasoned pilot with extensive flight experience. He served as the flight leader of Flight 19. During the mission, he reported navigational issues and confusion about their location. Pilot Lieutenant George W. Strivers. Lieutenant Strivers served as one of the pilots in Flight 19. Little is known about his personal background due to the limited available information. Navigator Bombardier, Ensign Joseph T. Bossy. Ensign Bossy was the navigator and bombardier in one of the aircrafts. Like many of the crew members, details about his personal life is limited. Lieutenant Forrest J. Gerber, pilot. Lieutenant Gerber was one of the pilots on Flight 19. Navigator Bombardier Ensign George P. Panessa. Ensign Panessa served as navigator and bombardier in one of the planes. Pilot Lieutenant Robert F. Cox. Lieutenant Cox was one of the pilots participating in the training missions. Navigator Bombardier Ensign Alan J. Costner. Ensign Costner served as the navigator and bombardier in one of the aircrafts. Pilot Captain Edward Joseph Powers. Captain Powers was one of the pilots in the F-19 mission. Navigator Bombardier, Second Lieutenant George F. Devlin. Second Lieutenant Devlin served as the navigator and bombardier in one of the planes. Pilot Second Lieutenant Charles R. Taylor Jr. Second Lieutenant Taylor Jr. was one of the other pilots in Flight 19. Navigator Bombardier Second Lieutenant Walter R. Parpart. Second Lieutenant Parpart served as the navigator and bombardier in one of the planes. Pilot Second Lieutenant Howell O. Thompson. Second Lieutenant Thompson was one of the pilots in the Flight 19 mission that went missing. Navigator Bombardier Second Lieutenant Albert E. Barbeau. Second Lieutenant Barbeau served as the navigator and bombardier in one of the aircrafts. And finally, Pilot Second Lieutenant Dudley J. Carroll. Second Lieutenant Carroll was one of the pilots on Flight 19. These 14 crew members were part of the training mission that ended up in the mysterious disappearance of Flight 19 over the Bermuda Triangle, and their fate remains one of the enduring mysteries in aviation history. The disappearance of Flight 19 in 1945 remains one of the great mysteries in aviation history, and various pieces of evidence and circumstances surround the event. However, it's important to note that the exact evidence is limited, as no wreckage or clear indicators of what happened to the aircrafts were ever found. Here's a brief list and summary of the evidence and key points related to the disappearance. Radio transmissions. Communication transcripts between Flight 19 and the Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station provide insights into the confusion and navigation issues reported by Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the flight leader. Navigation problems. Lieutenant Taylor reported compass malfunctions and expressed uncertainty about his flight location. The confusion led to deviations from the planned course. Weather conditions. Weather reports from the day of the disappearance indicated generally clear conditions. There were no severe storms or adverse weather that could explain the disappearance or impact their ability to locate themselves and return safely to base. Compass issues. The crews reported compass malfunctions and believed they were off course. This has led to speculation about possible magnetic anomalies in the Bermuda Triangle. Fuel depletion. The radio transmissions revealed that the aircrafts were running low on fuel, indicating that the planes had been in a flight for extended periods without finding their way back to the base. The US launched a massive search rescue mission for Flight 19, and the Martin Mariner flying boat was sent to locate them. Despite extensive efforts, no wreckage or survivors were ever found to this day. The disappearance of the rescue plane. Added to the mystery, the Martin Mariner flying boat was dispatched for the search, but it too disappeared without a trace. This secondary disappearance deepened the enigma surrounding Flight 19. Lack of wreckage. Perhaps the most significant aspect to the mystery is the incomplete or absence of records and wreckage from Flight 19. Despite the extensive search efforts, no debris, oil slicks, or other signs of the aircrafts involved in the disappearance were ever discovered. The Bermuda Triangle legend. The incident contributed to the legend of the Bermuda Triangle, a loosely defined region in the North Atlantic Ocean where a number of aircrafts and ships have said to disappear under mysterious circumstances. Flight 19 became one of the most famous of these cases associated with the Bermuda Triangle. Official investigation. The U.S. Navy conducted an investigation into the disappearance of the flight, but was unable to determine a definitive cause. The official conclusion stated that the cause of the loss of Flight 19 was unknown. The lack of concrete evidence, the mysterious circumstances surrounding the disappearance have both led to the various theories surrounding the disappearance, ranging from navigational errors and pilot disorientation to extraterrestrial explanations and paranormal activity. However, the true fate of Flight 19 remains unknown to this day. The disappearance of Flight 19 in 1945 was primarily investigated by the military and aviation authorities, as it occurred during a training mission conducted by the U.S. Navy. Law enforcement agencies played a limited role in the investigation. Here's a brief summary of key military and government agencies involved in the investigation at the time of the disappearance. The United States Navy. The U.S. Navy was the primary agency responsible for the investigation, as Flight 19 was a squadron of U.S. Navy bombers on a training mission. Navy personnel conducted search and rescue operations and led official inquiry to the disappearance. The U.S. Coast Guard. The U.S. Coast Guard may have been involved in some of the aspects of the search and rescue mission, especially if there were considerations related to maritime operations and coordination. The U.S. Army Air Force. The U.S. Navy took the lead. The U.S. Army Air Forces, predecessors to the U.S. Air Force, was also involved in supporting roles, given the inter service coordination that typically occurs in such situations. Civil Aeronautic Board. The Civil Aeronautics Board, a federal agency responsible for regulating civil aviation in the United States, also played a role in some of the aspects related to civilian aviation procedures and regulation, and has some implication in the military as well. It's important to note that during this time, the organizational structure of the US military was different from what it is today. The US Air Force became a separate branch in 1947, and before that, aviation related matters were often under the purview of the US Army Air Forces. The investigation into the disappearance of Flight 19 was a primarily military in nature, focused on the understanding the circumstances surrounding the disappearance and conducting search and rescue operations. Civilian law enforcement agencies at the local, state, or federal levels did not play a significant role in the particular case. To this day, this remains an unsolved mystery.